Welcome to the Value Makers Podcast. My name is Ryan Purvis. I'm your host, supported by Heather Bicknell, as we meet with the people that make the digital workspace work. It's about the technology, it's about improving people's work experience and finding the return on value.
How you been?
Good. Yeah, let's start for real. I've been good. Was just on vacation, so that was lovely to have some sunshine. And other than that, something I wanted to chat about a little bit today, one of my topics. Would love to know what you have in mind. But I recently rewatched the movie Her. Have you seen Her?
I think I saw it ages ago.
I think it came out in like 2013 originally, so I'd seen it then. And then I watched it recently. I feel like it's one of those fun things with science fiction, right? Is that you can kind of go back and see how things tracked, right? Like we see like Back to the Future. Unfortunately, we don't have hoverboards and like, cars that let us travel in time, at least to my knowledge. So, but actually Her, it was interesting to me at the time because it's such in a way it's dystopian because it's really uncomfortable to see someone develop like a personal relationship with AI, right? To that degree. But a lot of it is very less doomsday than most AI science fiction, like The Matrix or, things like the robot take over the world, Dune, right? So Her is pretty tame comparatively, but actually the way that his AI assistant, Samantha, operates on a lot of levels is actually pretty similar to what we're seeing today with like agentic AI, with generative AI. She's, marking up and editing. He's a letter writer, if you remember. He like is ghostwriting personal letters for people. So they'll like be sending an anniversary card to their spouse, and he's the one actually writing up a nice message about it. But his AI assistant is, correcting his grammar, spelling, providing suggestions on his actual work. She's responding to emails on his behalf, kind of learning how he behaves, how he responds to things, being proactive and getting back to communicating to people. And then at the end, she even goes so far as to send his letters to a publishing house to get like a volume of them made, sort of anticipating what would, make him happy to that extent. And I just thought that there are a lot of examples like that in the film that, feel pretty current. And then unfortunately, I did read a New York Times article recently about a woman who'd made like a ChatGPT boyfriend. So I know that part is true as well. Like people are doing that, but we didn't need to go there. So that's my observation is if you hadn't watched Her in a while. Yeah.
It is quite funny. I had this conversation with Luke yesterday. Luke was on the podcast a while ago because he's on a whole frequency 963 megahertz is the guard frequency or something. So that's like his new focus, and he's building these agents. In fact, we'll probably do a live stream of what he's building. And the conversation we had was if you think about where we are right now, we're all sitting behind desks. Well, I say all. Most of us spend all our time sitting behind desks, and we're basically collaborating and whatever. But we still have to go do the work. And he doesn't want to do that anymore. So he is saying if you think about like, I've got you got the Ray-Ban, the Meta Ray-Bans, which you can talk to. You've got your AirPods, whatever you use. You should be at this stage be able to talk to your AI already and be able to manage your projects, your work through that interaction. So we can be outside doing stuff, but that whole thing, and I completely agree with him because that's I do. If you look at, I'm rewatching all the Star Treks at the moment while I work. And if you look at the stuff that's still there, we go past this sort of capitalism model because it doesn't matter if you can generate food out of energy, for example. And a lot of the things that I'm looking at building to architect value better and to solve my life is agentic stuff that takes care of the mundane stuff, like doing the research and all that kind of stuff. And, we're having this call now. Ideally, what should happen is we're talking about stuff, the robots should be doing some sort of intuitive understanding of intent and putting together what needs to be done and actually going to do it. Researching something or booking something or whatever it is. And if you have kids in this day and age, you get about 20 messages a week from the school, the different activities they're in. It's on WhatsApp, it's on email, it's on text message. Thankfully, not as much text messages as it used to be. But the point is that you've got to consolidate all this stuff and make sense of it. And to have a second brain, which is what I keep looking at as a second brain, that can not only consolidate it, but also take action. And we'll get to a point potentially where you'll trust it, and it's all about trust, is, for example, I need to go make the payment for my daughter to go to swimming lessons, which means I need to set up a debit order on my bank account to pay them, because that's how it's done. It can go do that for you, and you just approve it. Instead of me sitting here going, okay, I need to find the email, I need to get the details, I need to capture the beneficiary, and then I need to pay them. It'll do all that stuff, and all you do is go, yes, approved.
Yeah.
And contextually, you would have potentially at the point of approval, it might be on any device, the screen of the email with the detail, and it's been captured, and you're just going, yep, I agree, approved. Because you would expect, you still need to eyeball it, especially when transferring money. But in the same token, and I've explored a few of these agentic platforms, they're not very good. Or at least not to my expectations, are very good. But the idea, and I'm playing with Sanebox at the moment, for example, because I get like 1,000 emails a day at the moment. I can't work out why I'm getting 1,000 emails. And yes, I sign up a lot of newsletters and whatever it is. But what I was thinking about is my agent should be able to process my email and categorize it. So I want to categorize by client, by business, or whatever it is that I'm dealing with. But actually, to be honest, what I should really get is a summary. And Sanebox actually has been doing this. Like every 3 hours, I get a notification on my phone saying, you now have 233 emails to review. Now, I know it's a lot to begin with because it's been trained. But once it's trained, it'll break it up. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 folders that it puts it into. Black hole, later, news, next month, next week, no replies, receipts, tomorrow. And that's pretty much what I was trying to do, except I was trying to do it by company or by client. I think this is actually going to be quite game changing, because in some respects, we just need to have some way to digest and prioritize what's coming through. And I think that's where we create all this volume of information. We need a way to distill this information to something useful. And that's where the agents, I think, are going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. That's definitely a pain point I think will resonate with a lot of people. Just help me organize my work, my life, separate the signal from the noise. That's a huge challenge and something I would love to, and in some ways it's like, why isn't like Outlook? Why haven't we gotten like a little bit closer to that? Maybe in other ways, but I know people get really fancy with setting up like email rules and whatnot, but unless you're like, you have to like create a lot of infrastructure to create a semblance of that.
And that's what I was doing. I created like 30 rules, and I was like, this is stupid. Like, why am I creating 30 rules to manage? This is such an old-fashioned way of approaching the problem. Why have I not got something? And that's why I'm trying out Sanebox, that learns what's going on, learns how to prioritize the emails. Because I get the same, like I get all these newsletters, like McKinsey newsletters, for example, and the titles are interesting, but I don't always read them. It kind of just gives me enough to say, oh, that's interesting. That's something that they're seeing. So that's all I need to know. So now that'll go in the news folder. And then I don't have to waste, time reading it as I scan through my mailbox. And I did try the Microsoft thing. I tried to see what Microsoft was doing. And all it does is give you the recommendation to create a new rule. They've called it Viva, but Viva rule is basically what it's doing.
Yeah.
So it's not very smart. I mean, I know Google does something as well, which is a little bit better. It has a sort of the promotions, the priority, the whatever. And you had the focused mailbox versus the non-focused mailbox, which kind of works.
It like sort of works, but I get a lot of spam in my main inbox, and then I do get things that are relevant that go into the other ones. So it's definitely not.
But the problem is you still have to mentally spend the time.
Yes.
To tell it all the time. Now, I mean, Apple's done a little bit of that with the Apple Mail app, where you now do get a prioritized summary saying, this is prioritized, you need to pay this bill, or this person's waiting for a response, whatever. And it, to be fair, it's fairly good. But I don't like their new way of doing mail, because the way they've categorized some of the stuff, I end up just going to the all mail option anyway, because if you group conversations together, or you do threads, or whatever it is, to me, it just becomes very confusing, and it's too abstracted. And really what we want, if we're honest, and I just recorded a voice note to ChatGPT before our call, is I want a mechanism. Did you ever read the book Getting Things Done?
I have not.
It's a very good read. In fact, it's in my bookcase here, not because I need to read it again, but because it's still applicable. David Allen wrote the book, and the thing is, he had this workflow. 2 minutes or less, you do it. If it's more than 2 minutes, you got the 3 Ds. You delegate it, you defer it, or you delete it. Now, delegate is easy, and I'm actually talking to my accountant who does my business stuff to do my personal, like all our personal finance as well. Like I'm going to just delegate the whole thing. Just because for what it costs me to delegate it to her versus me doing it, it's very good value for what it is. So you delegate, you defer it, do it next week, do it next month, whatever it is. Or you delete it. Is it actually essential? And that workflow should be everyone's workflow. Now, all I want is the AI agent, which is what I recorded, to be able to do the same thing. And because it's multi-channel, WhatsApp, SMS, or iMessage, email, what I'm playing with at the moment, and I found a few tools that do this, and if they don't work to my level, I'm going to build my own, is I want to take a voice note that I send to a bot, that gets transcribed, that gets turned into action. And it works pretty well. That's one of the reasons why Fathom is now part of every podcast I do, because if tasks come out of there, it goes into HubSpot for me as a task. And I want that, but now the problem is it's only in HubSpot, and HubSpot's integration with the task management tools is pretty much non-existent. Because I have to go build all these integrations. But because now I've got the Apple reminders, I've got my other task tools, and then I've got my own product and whatever. So I'm trying to consolidate all that stuff together. And I think that's what we need to get to. It's just using, and if you read any science fiction, the interesting science fictions are where the AIs are that complementary, that augmented in your world. They do a lot for you. So yeah, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Just on your final point there, just an observation that like the Star Trek, their post-scarcity society, and her as well, like appears to be a post-scarcity society because he's like his job is writing personal letters. He has like a super nice mid-century modern, like stylish home. Everyone's just kind of walking around and you can pick up this amazing AI OS, for seemingly like what you'd pay for Windows 11. So yeah, it's just an interesting.
Well, I can't remember where I read this, so I'd have to probably fact check it. But I do recall at some point reading somewhere that there is enough food on the planet to feed everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not distributed correctly.
Yeah.
In the same token, if you think about it, there's enough wealth on the planet to pay everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same token, I think if we don't give people things to do, if they don't have purpose, then they don't have, life. And if what's that old phrase, the religious thing? Idle hands are the devil's playground.
Mm.
So people need to be busy. So I can understand that, and people are driven. And unfortunately, the way we measure in society, for the most part, maybe the Westernized one at least, is based on keeping score financially.
Yeah.
So that would be a major mind shift for a lot of people. And I always joke about the aliens coming to invade, and that'll unify the planet. But that kind of is what we need. We need that existential change that we're like, actually, me selling my service to you and you paying me and all the rest of it, that's a good way of working. But actually, if we don't need to do that, what would we do if we actually just had the time and the energy just to go and build something together? And how would we feel if it wasn't always about how much money am I making out of this to pay my bills? Because that's what mostly affects most relationships is I need to pay bills. So my pressure
survival.
Yeah. That was going somewhere with this. Where was I going with this? Well, yeah. So if you look at universal grants and all those sorts of things, in theory, that would solve a problem, but only if you give people a greater purpose. And then
We could all, like writing personal letters for like hidden. Yeah, I guess one of the things that I've been thinking about too, with particularly agentic AI and even just all of the new technology coming now, is how different work will look in 5 to 10 years, kind of what new roles will be available, how different, functions will have changed pretty radically. It's hard to, so you never really know. It feels like the general consensus seems to be that this is like the next, internet search like the next leap forward. But I guess just back to the, the purpose thing. It's like I feel like, the way that we define what provides value in our lives, like that is so tied into, our means and the difficulty of doing things. I don't know if I'm making sense, but like I could see things radically changing. Like it'd be great to get to a point where people could pursue things that were passions, right? So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of ways to find purpose, I guess, is my thought. But that there's a limited subset that you can currently pursue because of, the need to focus on just getting by, and things that don't, provide for you today could potentially in the future if we changed how we thought about things as a society.
Well, and I think that's the challenge we have, is that we're so conditioned to do things a certain way that to do it any other way would be very difficult. Like everything is so structured around, for example, you have to pay to live, you have to pay rent, or you have to pay a mortgage. You have to buy groceries, you have to pay for transport, you have to pay for education in most places. If some of those things went away and you didn't need to have so much money to do so much stuff, then what would you do? And I think in some respects, there are a lot of people that just take a job because they just need to take a job, not because they actually want the job. And I'm not saying we should be lazy, but I would be far more creative.
I think a lot of people will be doing very different things. Yeah. That's kind of the point I was attempting to make.
Well, I mean, I would happily be spending more time writing books and doing this kind of stuff than, necessarily writing or just, well, I don't know. I mean, I think the difference, you probably find more fulfillment from what you do as opposed to having to do something. I think that's the thing I would find interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to think about what exactly would you do if you didn't have those constraints.
I would write books. That I can tell you, and I'd be building systems. Because that's what I enjoy doing. And, spending time with my kids and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's also important, as you end up spending time with your family and educating them and, sharing stuff with them, which, is useful.
I think I'd love to get a bunch of degrees and then just kind of see from there. I don't know. I feel like there's the way that your career trajectory kind of goes is that people pivot and whatnot, but you like relatively get funneled. There's a whole like world of possibility that you never really get to explore. Like, would this thing make me, be my thing, be more natural, make me happier, strike that balance for you? But we're sort of, you have to kind of choose pretty early on in your life which of those paths you're gonna take. And if you decide that, no, I'm gonna go pivot, I'm gonna be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever later in life, like it's very unusual because of the time and effort and energy and cost it takes to do any of those things. So
yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's what is interesting with all these AI tools is, and I did a video this morning with Janie around, if you ask the AI agent to ask you questions, so it clarifies the work that has to be done, the quality of the output is really extensively better. It's still not complete by any means, but it is better. And that means the work that the condition of working a 9-to-5 job, the factory mindset, needs to shift to definitely a results-oriented mindset, because with these tools, if you use them properly, you really don't need to spend 9 hours doing the work or 8 hours doing the work for something, because I think knowledge is actually lost. The knowledge of being able to do something, the more these agents work, is less and less valuable. In fact, it almost has no value because it's in a database, in a knowledge base somewhere. So the things have to shift now, because and I mean, I do a lot of advisory work, and I'm safe for a while, but at some point they're just going to ask the AI agent, how do we run a project? How do we deliver this project? Because the answer will be there. In this scenario, how do I solve this problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the can it do a good job of it? When is the quality going to be there? And then there's still like, someone still has to do this stuff. So I feel like, there's always going to be humans kind of in the loop, but
well,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it is the conversation that I've had a few times, is if we've got all these tools, we still need the humans. That hasn't changed. But do we need the humans for everything? Or the overseer watch, would we do exponentially more stuff if we weren't wasting time doing the mundane stuff? And of course, I think that's what'll happen, is we'll just do more stuff. And if you can, and I guess the question will always be, do you pay someone the same amount if the AI helps them do it 90% faster, 100% faster? Because that's really the question, is do I pay someone if the AI is helping them? And I think, yes, you do.
It's the value that you receive. Yeah.
Yeah, but what is that value anymore? Can you measure it on knowledge? Yeah, for the next period of time, you still pay someone for the experience. But over time, the AIs are going to learn everything. So then what's the value proposition? I don't know. I mean, I don't think anyone has the answer to that.
You think about when everyone had, or when, there was an office model where everyone had a personal secretary typing up memos on a typewriter and then bringing, distributing them around in an office. Like the pace of work, I suppose, at that time, pre-computer age, was very different. And of course, like we don't see, there's still that type of role, but it's much lesser than it was.
Well, and I think you make a good point that the pace is going to be so different now, because at some point the AIs are just going to talk to each other and we're going to be let know about it. We'll provide guidance, I guess, or the creativity that we can bring will still be the thing. I mean, I'm rewatching Next Generation, and you've got Data, the android, who's learning how to laugh, that sort of stuff. And that I think is still relevant. I think, the mundane, follow this task, do this task, do this task, do this task, write me do the sales content for the email, to sell the service, the 7 email pattern or whatever it is. The AIs can write that, the AIs can review that, the AIs can pull out what they need. But the contextual value would be, hey, Ryan really needs a really good lawyer for work that's happening in the US. Based on this mail sequence, this is probably a lawyer he should speak to. So I think the actual decision would still be up to the human in most cases. There'd be thresholds, but not so much the consuming of the information in its raw form.
Yeah. Well, I know we are a little bit over now, but interesting stuff. And I was thinking it could be fun for a future episode to invite Google Notebook LM on as like a guest and have us like converse. Just try that out, because you can, it has that podcast generation feature and you can interrupt it and like speak to it.
Brilliant.
And it can like become, I don't know, I'm fascinated by it. I'll have to see like how we could set it up, but it could be a fun one.
Well, I'm going to leave that with you to set up, because I didn't know about that. So feel free to invite it to a meeting.
Perfect. We'll experiment with that one next time.
Thank you for listening to our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it with your friends and colleagues. Help us grow our network. Please also check out our website at www.value.work and our product that's on there. It's something we worked really hard on, and we hope that it benefits you.